is it common for women to be spies?
They thought women were not physically, biologically capable of that kind of sophistication in political thought. They were, of course, they were there. They were completely active, but the great thing, they were invisible.
We're here at Harvington Hall for the Harvington History Festival. Nadine, Akkerman and Pete Langman, welcome to the British History podcast and channel.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This is the first time we've met, so I'm very excited to have you on and talk about your latest book, or your new book, on Spycraft in the early modern period. So before we get on to that though, if I could ask you just to give us a bit of background to yourselves, how you got into what you're doing now. Nadine, do you want to start?
I'm a professor of early modern literature and culture at Leiden University in the Netherlands. I love archives. I love working with primary documents and discovering new things, preferably things nobody has ever written about. So I've done a lot of women's history because of it, because we always tend to forget the women. And obviously spies, they live in a shadowy world, so they are more difficult to discover, and that makes them so intriguing.
Yeah, perfect for you there. And Pete?
Well, I'm an editor and an academic and an OED bibliographer, as you do. One of the threads of my academic work has always been history of science, which is one of the reasons that the Spycraft is so interesting, because it has all these scientific developments or non-scientific or parascientific developments happening and disappearing, turning up again, disappearing, and you get to see the roles that certain people and certain types of jobs play in actually developing different technologies, especially Spycraft.
Nadine, what's going to be sort of the focus of the talk that you're going to be doing here today?
We're doing two things, I believe. One is about her book, Spycraft. So we're going to concentrate on the early modern Q. James Bond is nothing without Q, and that was definitely true in the early modern period. I think we know quite a bit about 16th and 17th century spies by now, but not about the inventors, the Qs, the men who make the little machineries and work with invisible inks. So we're going to introduce one of those kind of major figures whom we stumbled upon. And he gave us quite a lot of information, and by talking about him, we're going to introduce several spy techniques.
Wonderful. Pete, who is this person that you're going to be introducing us to?
I'm not sure I could tell you his name, then I'd have to kill you. Arthur Gregory is the first and the main person we're going to be talking about, and he was a freelance counterintelligence operative who worked fundamentally from his house, either from his house or latterly in the Tower of London. And he was an inventor, and he invented all sorts of things. He claimed mastery over things mechanical, martial, and something else.
Mathematical.
Mathematical, very, very much. He designed a way of making strings so that your viols sounded better. He offered at one point, Cecil a coach. He had calculating machines that he designed. He also worked on invisible inks, and he worked on, he was especially concerned with counterfeiting seals, how you actually could effectively counterfeit a seal, which made it obviously much easier to intercept letters, because spying is all about eavesdropping ultimately, and you can eavesdrop physically or you can eavesdrop via letter. So if you can intercept a letter, you're doing the same thing, but you have to work out how you can make sure that the person at the other end doesn't realise that you're doing it, because obviously that ruins the whole effect.
Does his interest come from developing technology in order to spy, or is that just the application of what he was naturally inclined to investigate?
Well, thereby hangs the question. I've absolutely no idea. It's what we see is that he's discovering things because he's trying to solve problems.
Right.
Where exactly he got that desire and expertise at actually trying to solve problems is another thing entirely. So it is a chicken and egg in this situation always, isn't it? Which comes first, your desire to actually do this stuff, or your ability to work out how to do this stuff? So, and if you want to do it, you're going to work out how to do it.
So what was the need for spycraft in the early modern period, Nadine?
Oh, there was a massive need for espionage, really. England lagged behind in comparison to other countries. So if you look at kind of Italy or Spain, they have properly organized secret services, whereas here in England, we do not. So we have several secret services, basically all ministers who have their own spy service trying to gather information for Queen Elizabeth I. And there were kind of enemies within and without. There was enemies within England because you had Mary Queen of Scots, the distant cousin of Elizabeth I, but also claimant to the throne of England. So they were very afraid of her Catholic sympathizers. And then there was a threat of Spain invading, so the need for espionage was massive. So they had to adapt or die, basically, catching up with other countries.
And who were they learning then from other countries? Like, where did these techniques come? I know obviously they're being developed, but are they being learnt from somewhere else as well?
To a degree, yes. I mean, there are certain things, there are certain techniques that are in a couple of books that are current at the time, but they're not absolutely explained. So you might have a recipe from Invisible Ink and it basically says, well, if you mix this with this, you've got your ink. And it's like, well, that's actually not that useful. You still have to work out all the quantities and how to make these things work properly. So they'd be getting a certain amount of information from a board like that, and the rest of it they'd be working out through trial and error. And certainly Gregory works in certain points. He says, I know that this is going to work somehow, but at the moment it's really damaging my health and it's not quite working, but I know that I can get through it if I go through all these different iterations. So a lot of it is almost like experimental science, experimental chemistry. So they've got a rough idea of what to do, and then they're trying to perfect it, make it so that it really works in the real world.
So what sort of techniques are they using? What technologies, Nadine?
I have cipher and codes, invisible inks, various smuggling techniques. The things you would sort of expect. I think what is so funny about this period, because we don't have an established secret service, there is no kind of archive, there's no kind of training school. So as soon as someone dies, he takes or she takes the secrets with them into the grave, and they have to reinvent the wheel over and over again. So you see them reinventing the same invisible ink technique again and again in that century.
Yes, there's no institutional memory, and there are several instances, as Nadine says, of people saying, oh, we've got this marvellous thing for Invisible Ink and it's absolutely brilliant, no one knows about it, and then one of the members of this particular circle walks into a bookshop and sees it in a book, and it's like, oh, okay, so, but it's okay because it's so obviously out in the open that no one would even think that we'd possibly use that because it's so obvious. And so, I mean, these people are constantly making the same mistakes over and over again, and also thinking that they're immune to being beaten in the way that everyone always does. It's like, this code will be big, strong enough, it doesn't really matter. When in fact it's really quite useless.
Yeah, it's a kind of weird combination of completely amateur things but also very much sophistication as well. We think that our man Gregory invented what basically is a kind of copying machine which was kind of patented 200 years later. Yeah. So it's the thing he's describing. You think it's definitely some kind of copying device, but yet he doesn't explain it specifically enough. So you just end up speculating here and there as well.
And also what he does with it, what he says he does with it, which is a kind of democratization of Spycraft in effect. Copying handwriting is really quite difficult to do it well, especially if you're trying to copy Invisible Ink handwriting, which is even more difficult because you can't see what you're doing. But he developed a way of copying it so that you could do it even if you weren't that skilled, which of course changes the game. But because there was no official secret service at the time, when he died, secret died with him. Whereas a few hundred years later, these things carry on, and the people who invent them die, but the inventions stay and continue to be used.
Talk about there about invisible ink, but how that sounds, maybe I'm being naive, not that technological once you've got the recipe. What's like the most elaborate sort of techniques maybe that are being used?
Well, some of the ciphers that they used were particularly complex, so complex that they were fundamentally unusable. Right. And actually they worked out this is going to be almost completely unbreakable, and it is almost completely unbreakable. It's almost completely unusable because it takes so long to actually encode anything and decode something. And also the chances of you making a mistake are so large, and every time you make a mistake it just multiplies on itself. So I mean, some of the ciphers were very complex. The inks were interesting actually, because there were so many different types, and if you didn't know which type was being used, you could completely ruin the reveal. So if for example you use one reveal, it might destroy the message instead of illuminating it if you want. And there's one instance we've seen where somebody says the bearer of this message thinks that it needs to be revealed in water, and what he's saying is, I know that it has to be revealed in heat. If you reveal it in water, it'll just wash it away. So you have to be quite careful with these things. So it may sound technologically kind of simple, but actually it's quite a serious thing. I suppose letter locking as well was particularly complex, wasn't it? Some of that.
Yes, the way they folded their letters. This is at a time when we didn't have envelopes yet. So an envelope is a 19th century invention. In the early modern period, you just took the sheet you were writing on and you folded it into your own kind of package, or it became a little envelope in and of itself. So people had very complicated ways of folding their letters. They could say, if we are spies and communicating with each other, I could fold a kind of origami bird, and you would know this is a specific bird that Nadine folds. So I wouldn't have to sign the letter at all.
Oh, they would even, so their style, they had a style in
yes,
their letter
they had a style in folding. And definitely Charles I recognized one of his female agents, and through the folding, she said, I definitely know it's her because this is the way she folds her letters. So it's quite a useful thing to be able to be a good letter locker.
And also there are times when you see certain individuals saying, we've got these letters from this particular government department, but you know what, the folding is wrong. I just don't trust them. I think these have been counterfeit because the folding is all wrong. They don't do it like that over there. So these things are detectable. If you get them wrong, the people realise what's happening. They know what you're doing. And of course could be fatal.
That's fascinating. So, and then you talked about women's history before, and then you've just said about female spies. Yeah. Is it common for women to be spies?
Well, certainly during the Civil Wars, one of my earlier books was Invisible Agents, which focused specifically on finding these women agents, or women who worked in a dangerous trade in any kind of fashion. And before my book, the basic assumption was that there are no women in this period active in the Secret Service, or whatever you would call the trade of espionage then. And I found about 60 of them. So they were, of course, they were there. They were completely active, but the great thing, they were invisible. And that's, of course, the best.
Hiding in plain sight.
Hiding in plain sight. Nobody suspects a woman.
If no one believes that you're sophisticated enough to do something, you can do whatever you want.
Yeah. They thought women were not physically, biologically capable of that kind of sophistication and political thought. So that was kind of, they underestimated.
Deception as well.
And deception. So it's, no, they were quite active, and there's some marvellous women out there.
Fantastic. Well, I'm really looking forward to your talk. So before we wrap up and I let you go, are you online? Is there anywhere you want people to go to find your work? Or?
Well, I have my own website, nadineakkerman.com. I'm at Mid-Walsingham on Blue Sky.
So I'm PeteLangman.com. There's things there that I've done.
And you can find all the books in the regular bookshops through all the regular channels. And please support your local bookshop.
Yes, absolutely. Wonderful. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Our
Thank
pleasure.
you.